you. Thank you for watching the launch of the new Shipa webcast series called Talking Shipa. I am Jim Schultz. I'm a developer advocate at Shipa, and we're very happy to announce the release of version 1.2 of the Shipa Application Management Framework for Kubernetes. I've asked our founder and CEO, Bruno Andrade, to spend a few minutes with us today to talk about some new features and some new improvements that are packed into this new release. Hello, Bruno. Thanks for taking the time to speak with the community here today.
Hey, Jim. Good to be here again. How are you?
Good, good. Long time no talk, right?
Yeah, exactly. Since 10 a.m. this morning.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for being here. There are a lot of new features and improvements in 1.2. But the items I'd like to cover with you here today are some improvements, things like multi-cluster and multi-tenancy, and also like to talk about some of the new features, some application observability, the network policies map, integration with Istio and canary rollouts, Vault integration, and then also integration with private registries, including JFrog. We're going to time code all of these topics in the description below as well. So if you'd like to jump ahead or skip around, you can do that. We'll try to make it easy for you. But before we start and go through all these features and improvements, Bruno, for anyone who's brand new to Shipa, would you mind? I thought it would be great if we have the CEO and founder give kind of the 2-minute pitch of what is Shipa, what is the Shipa Application Management Framework?
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Jim. I think an easy way to explain that is, as we talk to customers and users today, two things are very clear to us, right? One is, how do you give your developers a way for them to deploy their applications in a way they're not dragged into the infrastructure layer and the Kubernetes layer and have to learn all the objects and so on? So how do you give them an easy way to deploy their applications? And post-deployment of their applications, give them a way to visualize if the deployment worked fine or not, the status of their application, the related objects, so they can have full observability of their apps while enforcing security and controls, right? So you want to make sure that deployments are following the parameters you want, the network policies you want to get, the resource. So, and that's a main issue that we're seeing out there as folks, they scale on Kubernetes. So Shipa comes in to solve that exact problem, where DevOps and platform engineering teams, they can define controls and guardrails and governance, and they can give those as the interface for their developers through a developer portal, where they can deploy their applications without having to learn the infrastructure layer or even without knowing there is Kubernetes, while gaining full observability of their application pre and post deployment.
Awesome. And for anyone watching too that would like to get a more in-depth overview of what Shipa is, I'll put a link in the description as well to a Shipa overview video. But for this one, we'd like to jump in straight into the latest release. So in 1.2, there are a lot of new things we'd like to cover for everybody. So let's start with the improvements. So what can you tell us, Bruno, about the improvements to multi-cluster and multi-tenancy that are included in Shipa 1.2?
Yeah, we focused a lot on bringing some workflow and governance around these, right? As organizations and teams, they start adopting more and more Kubernetes, it's not uncommon to see the adoption of more clusters to be able to address requirements such as maybe high availability, different teams, or clusters running in different clouds. And it brings a lot of constraints and challenges when you're trying to bring a developer experience on top of these multi-clusters at the same time that you're enforcing some policies and governance. That's one key issue that we address here. And at the same time, this is directly related to your multi-tenancy, right? If you're adding multiple clusters, that probably means you're adding multiple services that you're deploying, multiple users, and usually giving Kubernetes as the interface to your developer is a challenge, and controlling who has access to what and the teams and the policies. So on version 1.2, we brought a very structured workflow around that, where you can easily add multi-clusters that may be sitting across multiple clouds, such as maybe you can have OKE, GKE, on-premises Kubernetes, and OpenShift, and you can lay that layer of governance on top of all of them, and you don't need to be concerned about how do I apply this on GKE versus AKS, at the same time that you're controlling what your developers can do, how they can deploy their applications in a way that they are not impacted. So I would say bringing a work on top of the multi-cluster cloud and the multi-tenancy was definitely one of the biggest focus for 1.2 on deploying and managing apps.
Yeah, I think that's huge, right? I think most of our users are in some sort of hybrid, multi-cluster, multi-cloud, multi-tenancy type of situation. That's the strategy the company's chosen to go with. So, yeah, very important that they're able to make some sense of all of that in an easy way.
Exactly.
So let's jump into some of the new features here that are in 1.2. What can you tell everybody about application observability, which is a very hot topic right now for a lot of people in the DevOps space?
It is, and that's one topic that we hear a lot. People talk a lot about how do I deploy my app, and it's great. But we say, from what we're seeing from users, this is just part of it. In a way that we're seeing folks saying, well, okay, now that I deploy my app, how do I know what my app actually is, right? These applications, they become living objects in the cluster. Now my developers, they don't know how to support the application. They don't know the status of the app, or my SRE team or the application support team, they don't know what to do. And we spent a lot of time around application observability because truth is, a lot of the folks, they already have maybe some monitoring solutions in place, right? Such as Prometheus or Datadog or others. But bringing full observability into the picture and understanding and knowing how to support the apps is something that they don't have today. And for enterprises to adopt Kubernetes at scale, it's something that's missing. So when we look at application observability from a Shipa 1.2 perspective, what we did is, what you see in front of you now, it's my Shipa dashboard, where I can pick one of the applications that I already have deployed. You can see the status of the application, of course. But one of the great things that you can see is an application dependency map. What that means is you have here the application code that your developer deployed through their CI pipeline, for example. And on the right, you can see all the objects that Shipa created related to that application. So you can see things such as my container, the image that it's using, and you can see the status of it and the description of each. You can see even application dependencies. So in this case, I know this application is on a gem file, for example. I can see secrets, services, volumes, and the status of the volume. And I can keep going down all the way to know what type of hooks the application is running every time it restarts, and any command that the application starts. For example, here I'm running a Ruby command every time my application starts on a specific port. So now it becomes really easy for the developer and or the SRE or application support team to understand, great, this is my application code, but these are all the objects that are related to my app, the description of each, the status. So if there is a problem, I can quickly understand, map, and support my application, in addition to all the other things, such as the transaction information of your application, where the units are distributed, a life cycle of your application, so who did what and when, and the log associated to that activity, integration into your incident management tools and others. So now you have a structured workflow that can guide you how applications are deployed, what was deployed, how they relate to each other, the status, so you can really understand and support your application moving forward now. That's one of the main features for 1.2 for sure.
Yeah, this is really cool too, because you remember back a few months ago, and we launched our Coffee and Containers web series with Kelsey Hightower on that webcast. We did a poll or a survey before that, asking people what some of the biggest challenges were. Observability, I think, was number one on that, right? Like really making sense of an object-centric type of environment as compared to a traditional type of application-centric environment. So bringing that together for people is huge, really cool.
Exactly, because a lot of people, they focus just on the monitoring, so getting transaction status code and requests per second for the app, which is great, and you definitely should do. But from an observability perspective, especially as you move to microservices and others, then there's a lot more to it for you to be able to effectively support your application, especially at scale.
Yeah, very cool. Well, let's jump on to the next one here. Let's talk about let's talk about network policies map and integration with Istio together, because they are somewhat related here. So what's new there?
So we brought in the integration with Istio as well on 1.2. Istio is definitely one of the most adopted today, I would say, from an ingress controller perspective. We also have others and support others such as traffic. But one thing that is common to here is it's really hard for you to consume network policies today, right? Especially as you start adopting multiple clusters across multiple clouds, you may have different ingress controllers across these multiple clusters. And what we did is we brought a network policy that is actually driven from an application perspective rather than an ingress, which means that we built a standardization layer on top of the ingress controllers that we support today. So it's easy for you, developer or platform engineer DevOps, to consume that. And what I mean by that is you can come in here, for example, I'm going to set the policy for a specific app. This is for my ingress. So I can say, well, custom rules. And I'm going to call it, let's say, a web rule and web traffic. And I would say, well, for this application, my application called dev app1, I only want to allow dev app2 to connect to my application. And I want to allow it on port maybe 8080 on a protocol TCP, for example. I don't have to know anything about Istio. I don't have to know how to translate these into ingress rules on YAML files on Istio or traffic. I'm defining application business logic level. And from an egress perspective, I can say deny all. Once this is applied, I'll get one application that already has one here. I can see that easily represented here on a graphic format that I'm seeing, okay, my dev2 app can receive ingress from my dev app1 through port 8080. That is sitting on this pool or this Shipa framework. So now I can see how traffic is actually flowing into my application. Again, it doesn't really matter if one cluster is using Istio, another cluster is using traffic, but now you have a standardized way of defining and visualizing network policies. And same way from an ingress perspective, I can see that my application cannot send any data outside the container or to the internet. So now it becomes really easy for users to have a full life cycle of their applications, including network policy, in a way that can be operationalized in the enterprise or consumed by your developers or DevOps teams.
Very cool. Yeah, anything visual is always good for me.
I think for everyone that I've heard of folks saying that supporting microservices from a network policy perspective gets so complicated that sometimes they have to go to a board and start kind of drawing things. This service should connect to that service in the other cluster, and so on. So this definitely makes it a lot easier if you want to troubleshoot or understand what's going in and or out of your application.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. Let's jump on to the next one. Let's talk about secrets. Let's talk about integration with Vault. What do we got there in terms of 1.2?
Yeah, Vault is definitely by far one of the most used secret management tools. So what we try to do on version 1.2 is we try to make it as easy as possible for the developer to directly inject Vault secrets into their applications at deployment time. And the easiest way that we found researching and talking to developers and getting their input was that they can inject that security configuration, that Vault configuration, directly into what we call a Shipa YAML file. That Shipa YAML file can be hosted in the Git repo of your application, so in the root directory of your Git repo. And directly here, for example, you can get a secret from Vault for your database, inject it into your app or container as Shipa builds it and deploys it. So your application has instant access to that database or queue or whatever you're pulling the secrets from or for, and have that readily available. So it's easy for developers now to inject secrets without kind of having to learn how to do this all on Kubernetes today. Awesome.
That's really cool. So let's talk about the last one here. Wrap it up with our friends over at JFrog. Is one of the private registries that we integrate with now. Do you want to talk about the new integrations we have with private registries?
Yeah, deploying applications from private registry is definitely one of the most requested features for users that want to easily deploy from a dashboard. So your developers today, they can use and leverage Shipa as their developer portal. And once they have their applications created here, they can quickly come and say, deploy my application. This one is already deployed. But they can come in here and say private registry, for example, where they can pass the registry image, the registry username, and registry secret. And the JFrog is one of the partnerships that we recently started launching and going to market with, including the integration into their CI pipelines. So you can build a full kind of DevOps and DevSecOps pipeline together between Shipa and JFrog. And Artifactory, as well as others such as Docker Registry, Google Container Registry, Amazon Container Registry, and others can be pulled the image directly from there and deployed on Shipa, so users can deploy images and applications. Really don't matter where they come from.
Very cool. Yeah, and we did just record a video with our friends at JFrog last week. I'll put the link to that video in the description as well. So we do talk a little bit about that integration in some more detail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. That's it. That's all of the things that we wanted to talk about here today. Bruno, thank you very much. And thank you to everyone watching. If you'd like to get started with Shipa, there is a free version available for you. I'll link that in the description as well. Bruno, again, thank you very much for taking the time to record this video here today.
No, thank you, Jim. Thanks everyone for watching. We hope that 1.2 helps you to speed up the adoption velocity in your organization when it comes to microservices and Kubernetes. And happy to keep driving that initiative forward.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Look forward to talking to you all again soon.
Thank you.